It's like when you like meet people on Zoom, it just like doesn't feel real. Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Okay.
I knew. I'm like, oh, she's hopeful. I was like, I don't know what she's doing, but all I know about babies is that
everyone learns.
no plan for kids. And they're next year. So I'm doing okay. I'm on leave right now. Sad that it's almost over. It's like the fastest semester ever. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's true. Yeah. So things are crazy, but it's it's fine. Here we are. Like public history thing. I don't know if you know anything about that. Oh, right. Now with Yeah. I'm doing the public history one, and then I'm gonna be in the grad so that's gonna get this month. And then I do like my national service for the Immigrant and Ethnic History Society. So I'm the chair of the that's also gonna be happening in December.
Yeah.
Well, it just like picks up a little bit, and it's like I feel like it's my third year, so like it's
Yeah.
will be off next year. So it's applied. I applied for the ACLS. If I don't get it, then I apply for ACLS. Thank you, baby. Thank you, baby.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. The one time I'm gonna apply for the board in the last year. I don't know if you knew that. So I'm gonna apply for the board. I'm like, I might as well. So I'll apply for that one. Oh yeah. Okay. Like if we admit someone to it and it's set up, like they want to work with you or something. Yeah. So. Yep. Yeah. Right. That happened to me when I put even higher. That's what my started the same way I did. And probably even higher things that made her stop. I don't know what to try. She's like, no, she's just they want to say like right there.
Yeah. But yeah, I got kind of a tragic story.
She's Marcia Barrett. She's a professor at the department. Yeah, you can get some snacks. And there's water, coffee. Lemon bars. Yeah, we're gonna check that out. Yeah. Thank you.
Or what I run is Jim.
Oh, I'm in your way. Sorry, sir. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay.
What is Thank you so much for coming. Oh my god.
I do, I have it right here.
How are you? How's the baby? He's good. Yeah. He's good. Every day is like a sleep struggle out there. Is that true? Did you get the pacifier?
Yeah, so hearing like this week, the past like 3 days, he started to let me sleep a little bit longer at night. At least, still fighting naps and all that, but it's starting to look like maybe things are getting better. It's been rough. I'm sorry. It's good. So, happy baby. That's the more word. Yeah, amen. Literally, yeah. He has FOMO. He's baby FOMO. You're gonna have fun, or I am. I'm gonna have a lot of fun. A lot of fun will be had in this seminar. Yes, yes, ma'am. I think so. No idea. No, I don't know. I think he might be, like somewhere on the spectrum, Yeah. So, yeah. No, girl, I had no idea. Not just you. That's good though. I love my
So Well, that's just straightforward.
My closest colleagues, and also one of my closest friends. And I thought that I knew Kathy extremely well. In her wonderful complexity, I knew her as a scholar, as a fellow labor historian, although our time periods and places were very different, as a teacher, as a fellow DGS. We served on XCOM in the history department together on quite a number of occasions. We nursed our babies together. And she was really a co-parent of my children. And also somebody that we had a wonderful vacation traveling with. So I knew her across many dimensions of her life. One of the most remarkable and extremely moving aspects of the last few months has been to hear from so many people who had their own experience with Kathy and who knew her in completely different circumstances, were involved with her life or her work in very many different ways, but who also appreciated and admired her and loved her as much as I did. When we were putting our invitations together for this event, we sort of thought a bit, and we came up very quickly with about 260 names of people, kind of off the top of our heads. I know that we may have inadvertently left somebody out, and if that's the case, I apologize. You know, trying to keep track of emails for all the different people Kathy knew was not too easy, but I'm delighted that so many of you are here with us in person today. Also to the people on Zoom, thank you for joining us. And we've had regrets from people who could not make it either way, but who are definitely keeping Kathy close in their hearts today. So with that, let me turn it over, and I have left my program, thank you very much, so our speakers, just to let you know, are Dan Gilbert, Stephanie Furtado, Claudia Lenhoff, and Jim Barrett, and as I said, after that there will be an open mic. So please, Dan, go ahead.
Do I need to adjust this? So it's a real honor. Hey, everybody. It's an honor to be able to say a few words about Kathy. I first met Kathy along with Jim and many others in this room when I arrived on campus about 11 years ago in the midst of a faculty union drive. And my first conversations with Kathy were in organizing meetings with the Campus Faculty Association. As a bunch of us sat around a table with lists of names of colleagues in far-flung departments who we had to figure out how to reach and bring into the campaign. And it was really hard work, but it was also incredibly inspiring and even a little bit of fun at times. And of course, I already knew who Kathy Oberdeck was, being familiar with her scholarship. I went to the same graduate program that she had gone to. And so it was a really big deal that I got to become friends with Kathy early on. It made me feel like I belonged here in this town and on that campus when she embraced me as a comrade, simply because I showed up to a meeting at the Y. We didn't accomplish all our goals in that union drive. We haven't yet, anyway. But we got part of the way there. We helped to create the non-tenure track faculty union, NTFC Local 6546. Yeah. And that union is just one part of Kathy Oberdeck's lasting legacy at the University of Illinois. So over the years that followed those first conversations, I grew accustomed to seeing Kathy everywhere, on campus and off. I've never known a more dedicated and hardworking teacher, activist, neighbor. I still can't quite wrap my head around everything that she did. And like so many others, I'm the beneficiary of work that Kathy did, of the battles that she fought, of the dreams that she helped come true. To give just one example, thanks to Kathy's organizing, folks like me have benefited from a campus far more supportive of working parents than the one that she encountered as an assistant professor and new mom. And so much of Kathy's work in areas like this was unglamorous, unsung. Her organizing is part of the hidden history of struggles for social justice in this community and at the University of Illinois. One of the most meaningful experiences of my career was collaborating with Kathy on public history work. Over the last several years of her life, Kathy built an extraordinary public history initiative, mobilizing cohorts of students and community members, archivists, museum professionals, activists, in shared investigations of our collective past. Part of this work was the History Harvest curriculum that Kathy designed in collaboration with community partners that culminated in the recent Spurlock exhibit, Sewn in Memory, featuring AIDS quilt panels from here in central Illinois. And this was such beautiful work, as I know many of you know from being there at that exhibit, reflecting on the AIDS crisis in the midst of the COVID pandemic. It exemplified Kathy's approach as a public historian. She facilitated and enabled and empowered others to tell their stories, to draw lessons from the past to help make sense of the present. One of the memories that stands out to me in thinking about Kathy's work as a public historian is from an earlier project that we worked on together. So early on in our public history work together, we were fortunate enough to be working with a group of undergraduate students who had hatched this plan to create a series of alternative walking tours of the U of I campus. And Kathy had figured out a way for these students to get course credit as public history interns in the history department, and Kathy and I were kind of officially the students' advisors in this internship. And they designed this amazing walking tour by researching a whole variety of student protest movements and kind of foundational campus struggles, often overlooked or forgotten histories, such as student efforts to build and sustain the cultural houses like La Casa. So on the night before the students were to give their first tours, they needed to create these physical signs, these kind of historical markers that they were going to place around campus. I have this distinct memory of Kathy like running out to Walgreens to buy poster board, printing draft after draft of their copy on her office printer, otherwise kind of doing the grunt work of manufacturing these historical markers. And I remember being like somewhat baffled and like a little kind of annoyed by this. I felt like it was supposed to be the student's job, not the professor's job, to be doing this kind of work. But I sort of grudgingly chipped in alongside Kathy's much more enthusiastic labor. And the next day, the students did this absolutely beautiful, beautiful job. I can still see groups of students and community members clustered around these historical markers that Kathy had helped create. And the students had somehow transformed themselves into expert tour guides to the past. And were having these informed and reflective conversations about hidden histories of social justice on our campus. They were teaching their friends and their classmates and their roommates and their neighbors about generations of activists who had come before, made it possible to continue to imagine that a different, more liberated university might yet be possible. And as I see that moment, looking back now, I can see how Kathy's tireless work as a teacher made it possible, both through her own inspiring example as a scholar, but also through those late night trips to Walgreens. And she empowered her students to become teachers themselves. And as I look back now on that very special moment on the quad, I'm also moved by the realization of just how profoundly Kathy's own activism shaped the spaces that her students were exploring that day. In all that she did, Kathy lived and embodied the often hidden history of organizing for justice on campus, people working together to create a university that truly serves the public good. So when we keep Kathy's memory alive as we do today, I know we carry on this work of making history together.
The first time I ever spoke with Kathy was in 2007. I had been waitlisted at the U of I for grad school and had decided, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I get an email, and I'm in the middle of the Smoky Mountains in a blizzard. And it's from Kathy, and she says, please call me, I think we have a spot. So I'm on the north side of the Smoky Mountains National Park, and I had to stand on one leg with a flip phone on the side of a mountain, and I could hear every fifth word she was saying. And what she told me was, well, you waited too long to call me back because I sent you the email a week ago. But I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I didn't get it. So we gave your spot to somebody else, but we might have a spot for you. Let us, keep an eye on your email. So finally in June, I'm in Virginia, and the trail hits a place where it crosses a highway, and I had cell service, and I got another email from Kathy, and the first thing she said when I picked up the phone was, she's like, whatever you do, can you just stay where you are? It's going to be about 24 hours before I know if we have a spot for you, but can you just stay where you are? Because you have self-service. So I was like, yes, I'll stay where I am, and I just stayed at this little tiny hotel on the side of the highway it actually ended up being a couple of days, but I got in. Kathy was... And she had every single, if you think about being a grad student and all the different ways you interact with faculty, I interacted with Kathy every single way that there was. I TA'd for Kathy. She was on my dissertation committee. I took possibly one of the most sort of foundational classes of my entire graduate career with Kathy, a class on urban history, race, and class. And it fundamentally, it rocked my world, but it also made me think about urban spaces in a particular kind of way. Kathy liked to think about space, and I like to think about space in my work. And so we had meaningful conversations. I remember one time we were sitting down about halfway through me writing the dissertation, And she said to me, I'll just never forget this, we were at a coffee shop, and she said to me, what do you want me to do on your dissertation committee? What role do you want me to play? And I had 4 amazing men, including Dr. Barrett on my dissertation committee, but Kathy and I had this connection about talking about space and physical space and why that matters to how we think about history. And I said to her, I want you to ask the questions that they're not gonna ask. And without missing a beat, really seriously to me, she goes, oh, I can do that. And I was like, I know you can. You know, I remember I took a prelim exam with Jim and Kathy, and I instantly knew which questions were Kathy because they were 22-part questions, right? But each of the 22 parts was really good. And I, just to be honest, I don't know that I got through all 22 parts, but like Kathy always made you think. She asked the big questions. She challenged you. Dan talked about the public history work that she does and the way that she not only thought of her students, but also as historians and also as members of this community. And she made the classes that she had meaningful to the space that we were in. I graduated, I left, I went up to Chicago and ran a not-for-profit for a couple years, and I came back, and now I teach in a really wonderful program with Gus Wood over at the School of Labor and Employment Relations. And it's a great program, but it's a lot of social scientists. And when you're in a program of social scientists, and you're an historian, you present your work, and they're like, wow, that's such an interesting story. How did you find that out? I'm like, right? But you don't always necessarily get this sort of deep historical questions. And so what was really important to me is Kathy remained a touchstone for me, right? So that I could check in with her about being an historian and what that meant. You know, in my first couple years back here when trying to plug back into the university and the university culture, the public history cluster that Dan and Kathy ran was not only meaningful in a way to connect with members of the community, but also meaningful in a way to keep in touch with the discipline of history. Last semester, my students did an exhibit on a 1970 nurses' strike that happened here in town. Supported by the Humanities Research Institute. And the entire time I was doing it, I'll just be really honest, I just modeled it after Kathy's work. I just mirrored the kind of work and the kind of research and the kind of effort that she did with her students because she gave me a roadmap. Kathy, when I try to picture Kathy now, and I have to admit, I still can't believe she's gone. There's one picture that comes to my mind, and that is of Dan and Kathy when the graduate workers went on strike, when Gus was leading them in 2018, I think it was. And there's this picture of the two of them occupying the Henry Admin building. Some faculty went to the Henry Admin building and said, listen, you need to take these graduate workers serious, and what they're asking for is serious. And there's this picture of the two of them, and I don't know if they were grading or if they were doing research, but they're sitting on the floor with like books all around them, and they look really serious. But the thing is like Kathy understood the meaning of space. She understood the importance of showing up into space and what that means and how that can change this community, how this can change this campus, how ultimately it can change the world. Kathy is, quite frankly, I was blessed. I came to this program at a time when there were amazing scholars who, and there's so many of you in this room, who invested intensely in us as grad students, as who we were as people, who we are as scholars. I'm the person in many ways that I am today because of the history program here. But if you said to me, who do I want to be as a woman, as a scholar, as somebody in this community? Kathy. Kathy is the model of the kind of person I want to be in academia. I was blessed to know her, and I'm incredibly honored to speak here. And on behalf of a lot of graduate students who live all over the country, I got so many emails before today saying, just please let everybody know how much she meant to us and to the community that she fostered for grad students in the history department. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Claudia Lundhoff, and I'm the Executive Director of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. And I so much appreciate this gathering for Kathy and to be here with y'all. I wasn't able to be here when the service was held, and it really hurt my heart that I couldn't, so I'm very grateful to be here. I knew Kathy through my work at Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. When Kathy died, I sent an email out to our listserv at Healthcare Consumers saying that we have been graced by the steady, compassionate, and righteous presence of our friend and fellow activist, Kathryn Oberdeck. As in all aspects of her life, Kathy faced her cancer and end of life with tremendous grace and strength and with deep gratitude for the communities, plural, that she had become such an integral part of here in Champaign-Urbana and across the country and across the world. I want to tell you about Kathy's involvement with a particular project that we worked on and that continues today, which is the Fifth and Hill Neighborhood Rights Campaign. And it's a campaign to try to get rid of toxic contamination in a neighborhood in Champaign called the Fifth and Hill neighborhood. And it has been a struggle. It's been going on for 12 years and it's still going. So Kathy's involvement with healthcare consumers and the Fifth and Hill Neighborhood Rights Campaign began over 6 years ago when Kathy reached out to me and asked if she could attend campaign meetings. Our meetings at that time took place twice a month, and they were at Mr. Pelmore's home in the Fifth and Hill neighborhood. Twice a month. Kathy was always there. Kathy started attending meetings and was immediately welcomed by the Fifth and Hill residents who were pleased that someone at the university cared about their neighborhood and their struggle. From the very beginning, Kathy impressed me and the resident leaders as a very intelligent, insightful, resourceful, and generous historian who demonstrated the researcher-practitioner model and who was also a sensitive, patient, and effective teacher, helping me, our staff, and the neighborhood residents learn about the city and the history of the neighborhood and the surrounding community. But she wasn't just there in her role as a historian, she also was an activist with us. Kathy was a great person, and I don't say that lightly or offhandedly the way you do when you're like, oh, she's great. I mean, she was a great, great person, a special person. I know that I am not alone in feeling that my life has been immeasurably enriched by Kathy's friendship and by our collaborations in the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of building a historical base of knowledge that centers the lives of the people of the Fifth and Hill neighborhood. Kathy's work with us has been heroic, but in a quiet way, which was her way. Kathy centered others, and in doing so, she stepped to the side or to the back that the light might shine on someone who has never thought of their life as important to history. Kathy was humble and kind and warm and funny, and she appreciated the humor of others and the absurdity of certain situations. She's been like a sort of sister to me in this work. And one memory that I have is, you know, sometimes people would come to our meetings to try to placate the residents, right? Just, you know, they were showing up so they could say they talked to us and whatever, and they would, you know, quite frankly, just spew their bullshit. And Kathy and I always sat across a table from one another, and there were many stolen glances. And then eventually, you know, Kathy would ask a hard-hitting question, And she, nothing got past her. Kathy is one of the very best people I have ever known. She was true and kind and generous, and she had such a heart for justice and for people. She was a beautiful person inside and out. She has been stalwart in her efforts for Fifth and Hill, doing so much work to benefit the neighborhood and its residents. Her commitment was deep and true. And again, it was not just an academic project. How many meetings had we been in together at Mr. Pelmore's home, and then at Sandra Jackson's home, and then at Healthcare Consumers, and then during the pandemic on the sidewalk in front of Maggie Cook's home, and how many city council meetings and other kinds of meetings we attended, and over so many years. And Kathy's History Harvest Project has elevated the lives and experiences of our Fifth and Hill residents and helped the residents see their place in history of our community from a point of rightful pride. Kathy's work has helped give and elevate the voices of those whose lives and voices would have otherwise been lost to the ages. She brought resident leaders like Ebby and Maggie Cook, M.D. Pelmore, J.B. Lewis, Sandra Jackson, Eileen Oldham to classes at the U of I. The residents absolutely loved these experiences and opportunities and were treated with great respect and love by the students. The residents often spoke that the U of I should give them honorary degrees for all the teaching they got to do with Kathy. Kathy and I shared many sadnesses and sorrows together as well. We gathered together at Ebby Cook's hospital room when he died. This is, I think, when I really learned the depth of Kathy's heart and her love for people. She had been traveling, and she rushed to get to the hospital after returning from a trip. It was right after Ebby had died, unfortunately. She didn't get to see him. But she felt the need to be there and to pay her respects. And that just touched me so deeply. I felt like in that moment, I knew her heart. And I know that Kathy's love for Ebby and our other Fifth and Hill leaders is true and deep, and their love for her is the same. She is beloved and respected by everyone who has worked with her in the Fifth and Hill campaign, from residents to students to community activists. She stayed true to it. She was the rare academician who figured out, no offense, but she was the rare academician who figured out a way to use her university assets and work to help further the work and the lives of the Fifth and Hill residents. She's genuinely beloved by all of us. Everybody knows that Kathy had a true heart for justice and that her love for the residents is genuine and deep, and she made a big difference. She has lived her life brilliantly and to great effect in all the many different roles that she has played. She was a deeply principled person. Personally, just having Kathy be involved with us and be a sounding board and bearing witness to the struggle and helping with the struggle, Kathy has given me a sense of confidence and energy to continue even when I have been at my weariest. And this campaign has worn me down. We've lost a lot of people, and there's still a lot of work to be done. Before Kathy died, I wrote her a love letter, and I wanted to share part of it with y'all. This is what I wrote. You probably don't know this, but over the years, you have been a great source of strength for me, as I have struggled to keep this important campaign going. In any campaign for justice, an organizer faces internal moral struggles and has to weigh decisions that can have a great impact. Whether you know it or not, you have been a touchstone for me, and you have provided me with wisdom and comfort and the foundation to be strong and courageous in this campaign. In other words, you have helped keep me going. You have a sweet and tender soul with a light that shines brightly and warmly. You are a supremely decent and effective person, and it is no wonder that we have come to love you so much. It is no wonder that you gain the trust, admiration, gratitude, and love from our favorite resident leaders, like Ebby and Maggie, MD, JB, and so on, just to name a few. My mind is flooded with happy memories of you, memories from meetings at Mr. Pelmore's, including us enjoying his victuals. That's what he called his refreshments. After every meeting, he'd say, let's go back to the kitchen and have some victuals. And conversation after meetings, as well as memories from events and classroom talks where you invited the residents as guest speakers. Oh, how they love that. Kathy, there is a Buddhist saying about how the flame from one candle can light 1,000 other candles without ever diminishing its own brightness. I think of you as that candle whose light shines bright and is undiminished as it helps others light up and shine, bringing light to the darkness. My words are inadequate, but from the deepest part of my heart and soul, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing part of your life with us at Fifth and Hill, and I want to thank you for being my friend. Even though we did not spend a lot of time together, just being friends, we didn't get to spend a lot of time together just being friends, but working. I feel that I know your heart as you showed it so clearly in the work that you have done with Fifth and Hill folks. We are comrades in struggle, and our friendship blossomed from that, and I have been so fortunate to get to know you in that way. I just now, before I wrap up, I wanted to share a few conversations that I had with Kathy when she was in hospice. One time when Kathy really couldn't talk much because there were good and bad days, I showed up and I was wearing my Healthcare Consumers t-shirt, this t-shirt. And she saw it and she raised her fist in the air with a smile on her face like the protester on our shirt, and we held hands. Another time I came in, I held her hand, and I apologized for the coldness of my hand. She was not speaking much that day, but she said, cold hands, warm heart. That's what she said. One of the other things that she told me that I really wanted to share with y'all is that Kathy was in wonder and amazement at the communities that she got to be part of and the people who embraced her. She was so humble that it amazed her that people loved her so much and thought of her so much and embraced her so well. She was just filled with that wonder and awe, and she kept on telling me how fortunate she was. Another time, I told Kathy that I was asking my mother to look after her. My mother died in 2020, and I have very often felt her presence. I asked Kathy if she thought it was weird that I would do this. Not everybody believes these things. Kathy understood perfectly my meaning, and she told me she didn't think it was weird at all, and she thanked me, and then she shared with me some of her views, especially her beliefs around interconnectedness. And as I reflect on Kathy's life and work, I realize that the sense of interconnectedness was very profound for Kathy. And I think it really informed her passion for history and her dedication to history. I'm not sure I can express my realization very well. I don't quite have the right words for this yet. But what I feel that I learned from Kathy is that history, documenting and making history, is about interconnectedness, is about seeing those tendrils connecting us to the past, and the past connecting us to our present and our future, and how these are the through lines of life, and how history and how we are connected to one another through love and through struggle and through building community, and how important that is. I now see how documenting history can be an act of not only resistance and justice, but an act of love as well. Community was so important to Kathy, and she documented how it was created and lived, and how everyday people should be centered in history. I see so clearly how much Kathy loved her life, the people in her life, and how she knew so profoundly the importance of love, and how through love we remain connected. Where there is love, this connection remains unbroken across time, space, and the boundaries of this life. I will close now by saying this. Champaign County Healthcare Consumers will continue our fight for justice for and with the people of Fifth and Hill, and we will honor Kathy in this struggle. The work she has done is foundational, and we will continue to build upon it, I promise. I wish to thank Kathy's beautiful family, her husband William, her daughters Fiona and Cara, for sharing Kathy with all of us, and in doing so, having her become an integral part of our lives and our communities and our struggles for justice. She loved y'all beyond measure. So Kathy, rest in grace and in power. You are forever loved and will never be forgotten.
So I was doing okay until that last one. I'm thinking about the people that are not in the room here with us today that are on the internet. And just wanted to say a word about the pattern that's developed in the last 3 talks and that I'll refer to very briefly. This event was organized by an academic department, and I'll say a few words about Kathy's scholarly work. But it's not a coincidence that the last 3 people you heard from were our organizers. That was a big part of Kathy's life, and especially for people tuning in from further away, it's actually a big part of this community. So I'm very happy to talk about my friend and colleague, Kathy Oberdeck. People handle grieving in different ways, and I handle it by talking. So I wanted to say a few words about Kathy's work, including her work in the department, but try to put that in a somewhat broader context, suggest the meaning of it. But I must say that the last 3 speakers have done a lot of that. My friendship with Kathy extends back over 30 years. It started before her arrival in our department and in our community. I knew of her through shared academic interests, and I was involved in the search that brought her here. I only mention that because I was really involved with Kathy from the beginning. We also had a lot of friends and an advisor, Dave Montgomery, in common in Pittsburgh and at Yale, where Kathy graduated. All of us in Urbana are part of a wonderful community of scholars that matches younger newcomers with older colleagues. At least I hope we're still doing that in the history department. And I served as Kathy's mentor in the department and always felt lucky to have that connection. I think you get some feel for why in the last 3 sets of remarks. We shared this historical interest in working class and poor people, and we shared not only a host of students, but also a range of political values and experiences. Kathy was the sort of radical that will eventually transform our society. At a moment of rising fascism, which is the right word for it may seem that a more just society is far beyond our reach, but people like Kathy remind us, first of all, that we're on the right side, and secondly, that there's a human potential for a better world. Kathy's first book, for people that are not familiar with it, The Evangelist and the Impresario, was truly unique, and it remains so today. In other words, there's been a lot of research since then, but it's quite unusual in a lot of ways. And mercifully, I'm not going to go into all those. But there are 3 aspects of her approach that persisted, as I see it, over her career, and that remain important for us. She joined a strong class analysis, real strong emphasis on inequality, with a remarkably sensitive approach to cultural hierarchies and practice. In working class history, where the material, the structural, the narrowly political was paramount, Kathy took religion seriously. It's difficult to overstate the significance of this, but one way I would do it was with reference to this particular academic community, the history department, which I still consider one of the best in the country. Even here, most of us largely ignore religion. It's not a part of our lives for the most part. And yet it was vital to most of our historical subjects. It shaped their worldviews and motivated their behavior. Kathy's own religious beliefs, something I think it's already been mentioned once that she was, fairly quiet about. It certainly shaped this emphasis of hers, but she was also reflecting what she found in the lives of her subjects much better than a lot of the rest of us do. I'm told, in fact, the guy at the Lutheran Church, the minister was the one who told me, that there are other Lutheran Marxists. But Kathy's the only one I've ever met. Then there was Kathy's emphasis on the individual and the subjective. And I'm going to make it a point not to define the subjective, but among other things, people's personal lives and their emotions and human relationships and so forth. She did that at the center of a materialist theory of history. And if I ever forgot her connection with that aging approach to history, Marxism, she was always very quick to remind me. Her first book focused on the personalities, identity, and experience of two fascinating individuals. In her articles, which are still used in seminars, she probed the significance of personal narrative in working class history and insisted on the significance of the individual in the context of a class analysis. It's a point that's remained with me, as some people that are familiar with what I do know, and I think it's remained with others as well, those of us who are otherwise inclined to dwell on the collective experience of common people. In her writing, and perhaps more importantly in her teaching, Kathy brought an extremely sophisticated theoretical approach. It was a little bit too sophisticated for me sometimes, but and this wedded cultural history with social history because she was always nuanced and judicious in her analysis of cultural and social history. What she had to say, to be perfectly frank, was sometimes complicated. And that's right, I think, because the people that we study and their situations are pretty complicated. You can see this wedding of cultural and social history in her new book on Kohler, Wisconsin. And I wanted to mention that because it's far advanced. It was not quite finished, but it will be. It's actually transnational in its approach. And for those of you that don't appreciate the irony of that, this is Sheboygan, Wisconsin that she's talking about. And, but she places it very well within a global context. And Stephanie mentioned this emphasis on urban space. It comes across real clearly in this new work. Also architecture, design. The Kohler company is very famous for its design. And she drew on GPS technology to study this community and to place people and their community. But she always brought this back to the everyday lives of Kohler's working people. I'm going back over much of this writing now. Some of it is published and some of it is not published. And I'm struck over and over again by the care with which Kathy handled the evidence and her judicious analysis and generalization. She was simply much more careful about that than most of us are. Although she was more complicated a person than this, I'm tempted to say that Kathy was above all a teacher, and her unique contribution is vital to her understanding of ourselves and of this place. And viewers on internet are welcome to take that up. But again, I'm talking particularly to my community of scholars here. Around the time I came to Illinois, and shortly before Kathy joined us, the department went through a shift. Grossly oversimplifying, this was from intellectual, diplomatic, and institutional political history to a radical form of social history. There were many exceptions to this. Some of them are standing here right now and quite aggravated with what I'm saying. But generally speaking, I think that this is what happened. And I think it helps to explain the character of the department, not at this moment. Of course, it's going through all sorts of changes, but especially in the 80s and 90s. And it's reflected in the dissertations produced in those years. And as Stephanie notes, Kathy was really on a remarkable number of dissertations and exam committees. And as a result, she left an indelible mark on the faculty, of course, but I would say especially on the graduate students. And it produced a certain kind of history that I think is, in my opinion, is effective and not only in telling a story, but in, again, sort of getting at people's lives. I think she was particularly good at that. And she brought it back. You could, in the descriptions of her as such a loving person, you could forget, I think, that she always brought this back to issues of power. She didn't do this building in the department, and incidentally, many people here will understand this already, but the department, of course, has gone through more changes since the one that I described, and it's quite different today than it was when I came here in the 80s. But it's been built. It doesn't happen automatically. It takes a lot of time and effort. And Kathy didn't do that by herself. She was the quintessential colleague, among other things, and she worked with other people in producing these effects. But as I say, she left her mark. She certainly left her mark on my own work, which you can see pretty easily when you look at it. And I'm pretty sure she left a mark on many other people. And again, especially on these young colleagues who are the people that are going to shape the discipline in the coming years. I want to end with something that's been mentioned, not coincidentally, in one way or another, by all three of the other speakers. And I would think of it as Kathy's most important contribution to our lives as scholars. And I hope we don't forget it. It's in the blending of our lives as citizens with our lives as historians and scholars that we invest our historical practice with its greatest significance. Thinking of our work in terms of lines on a vita trivializes it, I think. Why should anyone care about any of this? The last three speakers reminded us of the methods Kathy invented to join her scholarly work with the lives of real people. In our department, of course, but as Claudia suggested, and again, I just want to stop for a second, especially for those people on internet who, Claudia gave herself a very brief introduction, but she's really a brilliant organizer. It's changed the community. And in the broader society, to try to make those sort of connections. Remember Kathy's fascinating and stimulating intellectual work, but also remember the strong sense of community, humanity, and ethical concern that filled her personal life and ours, I hope, with such meaning. There are reasons that we loved as well as respected Kathy. We should keep those reasons with us.
Thank you very much to everyone who spoke. This was incredibly moving and meaningful for me, and I know for everybody else. We are open to open mic contributions. Before we do that, people may feel the need of a drink of some kind after listening, or some more food. So I think people should feel free to go help themselves. I think that the history department end of term event will be here again in about a month, and if you don't eat it all now, it will reappear. So I think it's in everyone's interest to help out with with the food, and also prove to my husband that I didn't go way overboard. So maybe everyone feel free to get something to eat and to drink, and then we'll welcome people who would like to say a few words if anyone else wants to join in. One thing I didn't mention, some of you may have caught, Gus Wood did an amazing program on Kathy in the spring that was really wonderful, and that had many great people phone into, and we really appreciated that as well. So thank you for that, Gus. Okay, so how should we do this? Is there anyone who would like to say something right away, or should we have a little pause for food? Why don't we have a little pause for food, and then people who want to speak can kind of come up to the mic.
Okay, excuse me, everybody. Sorry about this. I know that everybody's having a good time talking, but will that work? That helps? Okay. I'm almost positive that there are some other people. I'm almost positive there are other people that did want to make some remarks about Kathy, and I know Antoinette has a few very short excerpts from letters and notes from some of Kathy's students, which I think will be great to hear. So why don't we just reconvene now to hear a little bit of that. And do you want to start, or would you rather? Whatever. Okay, I think we'll have Antoinette begin, but please keep in mind that anybody that wants to make remarks is very welcome to do so.
So actually can you hear this? Can you hear me, Daryl? There's a couple people here who I was going to quote from. I wasn't sure they were going to be here, so I won't do that. And so I'll be a little bit shorter than maybe anticipated. But I do bring a message from our colleague, Vernon Burton, and his wife, Georgianne, who says, I remember how excited the history department was when we hired the brilliant cultural historian who studied labor and theater. Kathy was a creative and insightful scholar and thinker. More than that, of course, she was a wonderful person, teacher, colleague, neighbor. We are happy to have known her. She enriched our lives, indeed was a blessing to us, as she did and was for so many others. The world is not as good a place without Kathy, but Kathy always left whatever she did better than before, and she leaves this world so much better for her presence here with us. So that's Vernon and Georgianne. From Toby Higbee, who's a professor at UCLA, right? Right? Yes, okay. Kathy Oberdeck was my teacher, mentor, collaborator, and friend. I first met Kathy in the early 1990s when I signed up for her graduate seminar on U.S. intellectual history. Little did I know I was going to have my mind blown by this new professor. She showed me new ways to think about the raw material of history and the imprint of the past on the present. Her fierce intelligence animated the feedback she delivered the work of students and colleagues. I had anticipated many more conversations about public history and organizing about the Midwest and Los Angeles. I am so sad and still in denial that Kathy has moved on to another plane. My deepest sympathies go to Kathy's family. I will hold my memories of her close. They inspire me to make the world a better place for the next generations, just as she did for us. Perhaps one last one before we open up the mic. This is from Richard Pithouse, a colleague in South Africa. Kathy was kind to me and gave me a moment of refuge when the academy in South Africa was an intensely and at times even violently hostile space for me. I deeply appreciated it and really enjoyed getting to know her as an intellectual and a kind and decent person. We were not constantly in touch over the years, but when we did talk, there was always an integrity to the conversation that I really wanted. Thank you, Kathy. So with that, we'll just open up the mic, and anyone who wants to come up, feel free.
Ollie and Claire, I love your couch, but wow, it takes some to get up off of it. So I actually want to thank Jim for always standing up when it's time to talk about Kathy, because Jim is still dealing with grief from the loss of our wonderful Jenny, and it takes a lot of strength to do this, and so I salute you. Jim, thank you. Towards the end of her life, Kathy spoke about what she hoped for, and she won't be able to do the things that she hoped to do, but I know that Cara and Fiona will do those things, and they're so wonderful. I wish I'd had daughters like that. I have sons; they're nice, but I wish I'd had daughters like Cara and Fiona, because they're just wonderful. And before I lose my nerve, the third verse of this song is a little heteronormative, so I'm going to skip it. But the first two, I think, are really apt to somebody who. Oh, I wanted to say I love the picture that's on the program, because it's Kathy with the strap over her shoulder, ready to go. You know, I don't think I ever saw her without her shoulder bag on, ready to go somewhere. So this is a kind of, this is two verses of a song that Frontenac likes, called "The Book of Love." The book of love is long and boring. No one can lift the damn thing. It's full of charts and facts and figures and instructions for dancing. But I love it when you read to me, and you can read me anything. The book of love has music in it. In fact, that's where music comes from. Some of it is quite transcendental. Some of it really is just dumb. But I love it when you sing to me, and you can sing me anything. Thank you.
I'll do it.
You will.
Thank you for making an awkward moment for me here. No, right. I'm here to defend our sons. Yeah. So I want to talk about something a little bit different. I showed up here in Champaign in 2009, and I actually remember the first social engagement I went to was right here, a history department gathering, and I felt completely like the man from Mars. I just come out, I did 6.5 years in prison, and I felt like I had the word prison written across my forehead. I was scared to death to talk to people, and if I said something, I was sure it was always the wrong thing to say. So it took me quite some time to figure out how do I live in this community, which was pretty strange to me after 6.5 years in prison and 18 years in South Africa. How do I live here? And how do I begin to develop some of the skills and build on some of the personal history that I had? And so I was fortunate, and I also was pretty unemployable. Coming out of prison at my age, flipping burgers at Burger King probably wasn't going to work for me. And so I was fortunate enough to get a job working in the office of the Campus Faculty Association through the graces of Jim Barrett, late Mark Leff, and Ron Peters, and so forth. And I still felt really all tied up in knots. And then Kathy became the president of the CFA, and she used to come up to that little office that we had in the University YMCA, and there was something completely different about the way Kathy talked to me and related to me compared to most of the rest of the people in CFA, let alone all the rest of the people out in the university. I've learned how to deal with all of you, but but at that time it was really awkward. And Kathy, I really felt, just treated me in a way that allowed me to kind of let my persona come out and kind of begin to become, who I knew I needed to be in this community and figure out how to do that. So I just am so grateful to have had that opportunity to know her in that context in a moment that was so important to me at a personal level. And of course, over the years, I've seen Kathy in a whole range of social justice struggles and so forth, and we shared ideas. And I never really connected with her as an intellectual. I connected with her as an activist and as a human being, and that was wonderful. And I'm just so sad that she's not here, but so grateful to have had that opportunity to get to know her and work with her. Thank you.
Uh, First of all, I known Kathy for over 20 years, 21 years since I came here from California many, many years ago. I really miss her. I really miss Kathy. I speak from the vantage point of being a historian, a member of the history department, and a U.S. historian. I mean, can you imagine a meeting without Kathy there, with a U.S. history meeting, a U.S. caucus meeting, a discussion about the Randall chair, and a departmental meeting, a CFA meeting without Kathy. I really miss her voice. The fact that someone had mentioned it earlier, that she devoted herself to really being able to take that space, to claim that space, really shows the depth of her commitment, politically, academically, and her commitment to this community. I just want to say just a few things on a personal level, because that's how I interacted with Kathy. And the things that I remember the most are the ones when it's kind of like, in your infancy, you remember many things. Because when I came here as a junior faculty, there were many things that I remember that Kathy did that were very, reflected her kindness. First of all, she was at one point a TA coordinator. We had such a thing. And lo and behold, I had a problem as a faculty with the TA who was running the class sort of, outside of being a coordination. And Kathy, I went to Kathy, and she really helped to talk to, the other TA to be able to straighten that situation out. A few years later, I had my first graduate student was studying with me, became involved or was experiencing racism and sexism in the department. And I think Kathy at that point might have been the DGS, the Director of Graduate Study. And she handled that with a tremendous amount of professionalism. This went on for about a couple of months. And just remember that being so impressed by that and being so thankful that there was somebody of that sensitivity to be able to handle the situation. I never had to explain to Kathy about Asian American issues. I don't know what it was about her experience, but maybe being, I don't know, from her previous experience. But I never had to explain that, and I found that to be really, really refreshing on a personal level and also on a political level, because we had to deal with issues of graduate admissions that were quite complicated. And I would say last thing that remember a lot in the beginning, because she would always invite me to come to dinner to her house. With William and Fiona then. I never met Kara because I was too busy sort of commuting from here to California. I had a commuting marriage for a long time. But she'd always be so kind to always invite me during this time, to her house and welcome me and made me feel welcome to be part of this department and part of this community. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And I'm very thankful I get to see William again. I haven't seen him in a long time since the tennis court, tennis Sundays. And Fiona, to see her, and then to finally meet Kara. But anyway, I just want to say finally, just thank you to Kathy for her kindness and for the love she's shown to everyone here and to our department.
So my name's Steve Vaughn, and I came here to do grad school in the history department in 1991. I really didn't know what I was doing. My mother sensed that, I think. She asked me, well, she was very disappointed when she found out I had applied and gotten into grad school. I'm not quite sure what all that was about, but so I stumbled about sort of aimlessly for a while. I came very quickly to realize because a person was a historian didn't necessarily make them a teacher of history. And I thought maybe this was a bad idea. I tried different topics. I tried different ideas for research pursuit. And then I finally started moving towards what ended up becoming my dissertation research, which was on fundamentalism in the 20s, and it was good to hear Jim talk about the importance of religion, because it was something that I had grown up with and knew that it motivated people, and it was sort of shocked to discover anybody would think otherwise in the history department. So for those of you that were around at the time, you might have known, it was right as Winton Solberg was retiring, and that's so there was this period where he wasn't taking new students. I had finally figured out what I wanted to study, but there wasn't anybody here to work with yet. And then Kathy got hired, and I had no idea what a good thing that would be for me. And I want to say two things in particular about why that was so amazing. I mean, I could say a lot, but I'll focus on these. The first is I, in the course of my grad school career, the other education I got was in organizing a union. I hadn't had a union background. I had had a very religious background. When a friend of mine heard my dissertation topic, he said, like a dog returning to his vomit. And I didn't have a lot of support, really. But I did from Kathy. So Kathy, when she got here, was somebody that was very sympathetic to what it was that I wanted to focus on in terms of my research, and believed in it. But the thing that really was crucial was that as I got more involved in the Graduate Employees Organization and became one of the co-presidents the year that we had our authorization card drive, I completely squandered a year's worth of fellowship money and got nothing done on my research. And only Kathy would have let that go, because Kathy was so sympathetic to the work we were doing in the GEO and had done a lot of that own work herself when she was a grad employee at Yale. So that's thing number one. And then, I finished, I adjuncted for a while, and then even that disappeared. And then I got a call, and I ended up in what proved to be my life's work, which is working in the labor movement. I've been working for the Illinois Education Association for the last 20 years. And that's been an amazing thing. And in part, it was possible because of the work I did in the GEO. But feeling as good about the work I did in the GEO had a lot to do with the advisor I had, who also thought that was important and didn't just think that the academic piece was what needed attending to. And this really came home to me, how much Kathy felt this way when I was at another memorial service. This was Mark Leff's memorial service, and Kathy and I were talking. And somebody she knew that I didn't know came up to us, and I'm going to break up here in a minute, but somebody I didn't know came up to us, and Kathy introduced me to him. And and when she told him what I did, she was very, very proud. And, you know, if you've not had the experience of continuing to live in the place where you got your PhD but didn't turn out to be an academic, and you constantly run into all the people that you used to do this academic stuff with, you might not realize how much that means. But for Kathy, that was, frankly, she may have been prouder of me for being in the labor movement than for anything I might have done along historical lines. So it is so wrong that she's gone, and I appreciate the opportunity to say something about it.
Thanks for organizing. This is actually a message to William. I wanted to share, I think he's somewhere behind. Oh, there he is. You have to stop standing sideways and I can see. So anyway, and William will know what that means, but I got to know Kathy through William. And although, as William knows, we grew up on different sides of the track, right? But I mean, Jim mentioned her transnational, I think Antoinette also on an earlier. I think I was always impressed by Kathy's depth of South Africa, and a love for the diaspora. So a lot of conversations about that. And I don't know if maybe before you left, there's a song that became very popular in Southern Africa from a group from Madagascar, which was about the blue sky. I don't know if you, anyway, it's Lanita Manga. But anyway, part of the words argue, I think that, you know, when the clouds disappear, the sky gets blue, and that's what everybody's celebrating because that's the portal that all the saints go. And don't we all want to go there, right? So in short, the song argues the people who we miss have just gone ahead of us, right? And we're going to want to join them. So anyway, I wanted to share that in terms of my connection with you, but also, Terry was mentioning about her daughters. My God, Fiona and Carter, I can't every time look at you and not see your mother, right? I mean, you are the embodiment of that, and I'm sure she would be very proud. I mean, Fiona, I see always in a garden space with food and whatever Kathy loves. Carter, I need to get to know better, right? But all of that efficiency that you have. Anyway, we'll talk about that more later. But anyway, I'm so blessed to have got to know Kathy through you. So thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, in case you don't know me or recognize me, possibly the last time you saw me I was about that high. My name's Fiona. I'm Kathy's older daughter. I just wanted to thank the history department for putting this on, and especially Claire and Ali for hosting, and Antoinette and Jim, and Claire for putting it all, putting a lot of work into putting this together, and to all of the speakers, Claudia, Jim, Dan, and Stephanie, and everybody who just spoke as well for all of your lovely remembrances about my mom. I didn't know her in an academic sphere, obviously, so this side of her life was in some ways kind of veiled to me, and it's very meaningful for me to get to see how impactful she was to so many people. I feel like I have to say that despite, while doing all of the things that she did in the academy, she was an unmatchable mother. She never missed events. She was always there for us as kids. And so you know, it's really beautiful to see how she was that way for many people. I did want to just note there were a lot of folks that expressed kind wishes and kind thoughts in the last weeks of my mom's life, and since then, who couldn't be here today. And some of them wrote some really beautiful things, so we've collected some of them together in a binder, which is, I think, under the TV back there if you want to have a look, especially of students whose lives she touched, which was, yeah, like I said, that's incredibly meaningful to us. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to the history department specifically. Yeah, we all miss my mom a lot, but we keep her alive.
So if you don't come up to say something, they all start talking again. So if anybody does have anything that they wanted to add, this is probably the time to do it. And otherwise, in terms of wrapping up, is it enough to tell people to eat and drink more? Or? They have to finish before they eat. Yeah. No one's getting out of here before this food is gone. So the only other thing I would say is this was, you know, as I get older, I used to be very, very impatient with ritual. And, you know, in some ways I still am. But they really do serve a function. People get together like this for a reason. And we've been given a lot to think about and a lot of different ways to remember Kathy. And that's, you know, short of having her here with us, you know, that's very important. So thanks to everyone. And we'll see you in other venues. Thank you.